sold the idea that financial independence is all about some number on your account statement, or even worse, that you don't qualify because of where you started out. That's just not true. It's not about some well-kept secret of the wealthy. It's about finding the right information and knowing how to apply it. On the Get Ready for the Future show, we're answering your questions so you can start making real financial change today. The journey to true financial independence begins right here, and it starts with you.
From the 6th floor of 3 Financial Center in West Little Rock, Arkansas, hello and welcome to another edition of the Get Ready for the Future show. My name is Scott Inman, along with one of the owners and founders of Gen Wealth Financial Advisors, Janet Walker, as we get ready to dive in to your questions and hopefully within those answers put you on a path to help discover, protect, and share true financial independence. And Janet, I was driving to the office this morning, and when we say that, we say that every week on the show, and it's true, but I wanted to personalize it a little bit before we got into the questions today. I was driving into work, and I drove past a convenience store, gas station there on my way to the office, and one of those Arkansas lottery signs was in the front of the gas pumps that said a $250,000 lottery ticket sold here. My first reaction, a lot of people probably look at that and goes, I wish that was me, right? Yeah. And I understand that. But my first thought was, and obviously we're financial advisors, so excuse us for thinking like this, but I thought, who was that person?
What do they do with it?
Where are they financially in their life on the road to financial independence, and what are they going to do with the money? And of course, they won't get $250,000,
right? But
there's a substantial lump sum coming their way, and obviously we can have a whole other show about not placing your hope in retirement in lottery tickets, but it's just there is a pivot point right there.
There is.
For that person, whoever it is, on their path to financial independence.
Well, and if you think about it, really for everybody out there listening, your opportunity for this six-figure amount of money to come to you is not necessarily through a lottery ticket, but through your 401k, through whatever retirement options you have available. And it doesn't feel the same because it doesn't come, in one lump sum magically one day, but it is still a life-changing opportunity. You just have to know to take care of it and to take those opportunities. Scott, if you knew ahead of time that you were going to win the lottery when you bought that ticket, you would absolutely buy a ticket, right?
Right.
The 401k and other retirement plans, they give you that opportunity to, over time, win at retirement, really.
Yeah. And that's what we're doing by answering these questions, is giving you the best information to make the best financial decision. It may not be $250,000. It may be throwing another $100 to a Roth IRA, but even that small of a decision can make a huge impact on your ability to reach true financial independence. So just think about that as we dive in. There's no perfect financial answer, quite frankly.
Right.
There's only the best financial answer and decision that you can make. So as we dive in, our first question today comes from Cassie in Little Rock, and she writes, I'm self-employed. What are the best available options for me to retire? I'm 54 and currently have $450,000 in a Roth IRA. Way to go, Cassie.
Yeah, it's great.
Maximizing contributions. What are more available options I could pursue before I retire around 65? Thanks for the question. Cassie's got about 11 years. She's 54, wants to retire at 65. I would say, first of all, don't stop putting money in that Roth IRA.
Yeah.
That's one of the larger Roth IRAs I think I've maybe even heard of, is $450,000.
Yeah, I would say, I would imagine that Cassie started early on that Roth IRA. So if you're out there and you don't have as much as Cassie, but you're younger, it's time to get going. So get rolling on those contributions. Cassie, we don't know where you are on your personal income levels right now, and how much longer, frankly, you would be able to contribute to the Roth. If your income reaches a certain point, then you're no longer eligible for those direct Roth contributions. So that is something to just kind of keep an eye on with an advisor and with your CPA. But also, we really want to focus on the fact you said that you're self-employed, and there are some opportunities that you have that are not available otherwise. And so we want to talk through one of the opportunities that you have if you do not have any employees, or even if you do have employees, but let's say it's a spouse or an adult child or something who works for you, so you would want to contribute for their retirement as well, then you might consider a SEP. That stands for Simplified Employer Pension. And the way this works right now, and these contribution amounts change annually, but this year you can contribute 25% of your compensation or $69,000, whichever is less. And if you have additional employees, you have to actually contribute the same percentage for them as you're contributing for yourself. That's the reason I mentioned that if you have other employees, it's fine, but like, are they family members? Is it somebody that you would want to contribute for their retirement as much as you're contributing for your own?
Yeah, this works well, I think, for 1099 independent contractor type employees, like a real estate agent would be, where you're all your money's coming in, and really you're the only worker, but you are also the business owner, so you don't have to worry about making contributions. The contributions here are on the employer side only. That's something to remember on the SEP too. So you get a tax deduction on the employer side for making that contribution on the employee side, but you get the benefit from both of them because obviously it's a pre-tax contribution going in, so on both sides of the equation. I think also there's the simple IRA that we should bring up too, because for small business owners, because again, we don't know what type of business Cassie has, but if it's a small business like GenWealth that has 40 plus team members, that probably isn't going to be a SEP. I don't think Janet really ever thought about bringing up a SEP IRA into the retirement plans here at GenWealth, but we do have a simple IRA.
Yeah, we do have a simple IRA. And as an employer, what I like about this is we're rewarding those who are investing in themselves. Mm-hmm. So, Scott, as a team member here at GenWealth, if you contribute 3% of your income, then we match that dollar for dollar up to that 3%. But if you choose not to contribute, then we're not obligated on that match. So as an employer, you kind of look at, all right, if everybody here participated, what is my maximum out of pocket? And you're looking basically at that 3% of your salary obligation is what your cost would be as an employer to provide this type of benefit. And obviously there are some tax advantages to doing that as well. And it's something that when we first put it out there, even at GenWealth Financial Advisors, where you would think that everybody would jump on board immediately, it took a while. We had to really talk with the team and help them understand about the benefits of this long term, but it has grown significantly over the years in the participation rate here.
Yeah, let's talk about a couple of more. There is, we don't have time to talk about all of them. There's also a solo 401k. We didn't really get into that. That's also an option for people who don't have employees. If you are a highly compensated self-employed individual, like a doctor might be, who works for themselves technically, there is a great option here to consider too, called a defined benefit plan. Now, you may have heard that in regards to a pension, and that's what it is, right? But it's not a global pension. It's not a corporate pension, a public pension. It's a you pension and that you create for yourself. There are some added costs to it, but in essence, you're going to develop a plan, and I would recommend using a financial advisor. We can help do that here at GenWealth to get a lot more money, because we talked about the limits here, and they're pretty high limits. I mean, the SEP IRA, you can get $69,000 into. The simple, you can get $16,000 on the employee side into. But if you want to get more in there in a quicker amount of time, and that's why I say a highly compensated individual, because they have that margin in their life likely, you could opt for this defined benefit plan, Janet, that will allow you to put larger sums in. The trick here is there has to be an amount designated per the plan that goes in so that you know you're getting that check as a pension payment in the future. Well,
and one of the biggest deals on this, Scott, is the tax savings. We have, on some of these that we've done, we've seen high 5 figures and even into the 6 figures of tax savings for people just by setting up this defined benefit plan. So if you have the potential to save significant tax dollars and then also create an income stream for yourself in the future, it really makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, if you want to learn more about any of these plans, you can always reach out to us here at GenWealth by calling toll-free 866-653-PLAN. It's 866-653-7526. We'll be glad to get you in touch with an advisor here on the team that can walk through some of these options to determine what might be right for you. Before we finish with Cassie's question, though, let's get off of the retirement accounts and just talk about a couple other things. One thing I think about, too, if you're self-employed, what are you paying yourself? Because that matters. from a Social Security standpoint. So when you talk about available options, don't forget about Social Security. That can be a huge part of your retirement income, and a lot of self-employed people don't typically pay themselves a whole lot. Yeah. And if you're not, then you're missing out on potentially contributing to your Social Security.
You know, I'll speak to that personally as a business owner. In the early days of GenWealth, John and I paid ourselves a relatively low salary, and we took the rest of our income as distributions from the company. And then as time progressed, you know, things get a little bit more stable and more predictable in terms of the income that's coming into any business, frankly, as you move forward. And so when we got to that point, we decided to increase our salaries, and one of the reasons that we did that was we already had that income level. It just wasn't in the form of a salary, but by moving it to the salary column, if you will, then that allowed us to be able to have in the future higher Social Security benefits. There are other reasons to do that as well, but it absolutely, there's a point in time as a business owner where you really need to analyze that and see if you need to change how you're compensating yourself.
And why do we say that, Cassie? Because like we say all the time, retirement is not an asset problem. It is an income problem. So you certainly have to accumulate assets, but if you don't know what that means to you in terms of income, you need to make a plan to know what you're even solving for. You've given us the destination year of 65. You've given us what you've got in your Roth IRA, but let's get together and make a plan to determine what you need saved by age 65 and what that looks like for you from an income perspective when you incorporate guaranteed sources like Social Security in there as well as your assets. If you have questions for our show, call or text them to us at 501-381-5228 or send us an email. Send it to show@getreadyforthefuture.com, and we might have your question on the air next week. Nick sent in a text, and he writes, "My wife wants to delay taking Social Security as long as possible, but I'm 62 now and wanting to go ahead and retire. What are the risks and benefits to waiting and living off of her income plus saved assets rather than claiming now?" Nick, thanks very much. Obviously, the biggest difference here, the decision, I think, rests on where your asset level is, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But I think to start with, we want to make sure, Janet, that we make a household decision rather than an individual decision on Social Security.
Absolutely. Nick, I would say that most people, you know, they do look at Social Security as an individual decision because you and your wife both get an individual statement from Social Security. Your statement has nothing about her benefits and her statement has nothing about yours, but they are able actually to work together. And so it's very important to think about this, as Scott mentioned earlier, as an income problem. It's not a Social Security question and a 401k question, etc. It is a household income problem that we just need to solve for what's the best solution to go about this. One of the things with Social Security that you want to consider, I don't know between the two spouses who has the higher benefit. And that's really important because when either one of you passes away, the surviving spouse is going to have the larger Social Security check as their benefit moving forward. So the lower check goes away, the higher check stays. And if you think about if your benefit is going to be the larger one, then you're locking that in at 62 instead of 67 or maybe even 70, so that in the future that survivor benefit is not as much as it could have been. And Scott, one more thing in that same bit of conversation there is the cost of living adjustments are also based on that smaller dollar amount. Yeah,
let's put some meat on the bone here for your decision, just in terms of what you're dealing with on taking it early versus waiting. If you're 62, Nick, then we know you were born after 1960. So your full retirement age is 67, and that is not the biggest check you could get from Social Security, just for you or for anyone listening who doesn't know that. Full retirement age sometimes sounds like that's my full benefit. Well, it is your full benefit, but you actually get an increase to that by waiting past that. You can delay up to age 70 and get 124% of that full retirement benefit. If you take it at 62, you're going to be getting 70% of the full retirement benefit. So that's a big difference. And when you think about the break even, because longevity matters here, and certainly as we've we've talked about many times in the client meeting room. I've told our clients when we begin to put together their retirement income plan that if you give me your date of death, we can build the perfect retirement plan, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
We don't know that. We don't know your date of death, but we do need to make some assumptions about longevity. And if you look at when it makes sense or how you might maximize Social Security based on the different claiming ages, according to the Guide to Retirement from J.P. Morgan, your full retirement age when compared to waiting until age 70, your break-even point would be 81 years old. In other words, if you took a look at taking it at 67 as opposed to waiting until 70, you're ahead of the game by 3 years. So it takes until you're age 81 for the 70-year-old benefit to catch up, if that makes sense. So 81 is the benefit break-even there. And then comparing full retirement to age 62, it's much sooner. It's age 77. So if you have longevity in your family, it might make sense to put it off. If you don't, it might make sense to take it early. 77 is really close to the U.S. life expectancy in the United States, a little bit under that.
Let's talk a little bit about life expectancy, Scott. I always personalize this story because I remember very clearly when my grandfather turned 79, and he was a very easygoing, happy kind of guy, and he was just not himself that day. And it was his birthday, of all days, for him to be, kind of in a funk, frankly. And finally, he told me, he said, honey, my daddy died when he was 79, and I kind of figure I had my last birthday today. He was here and healthy for another 9 years. And yes, he was thinking about his family background, longevity based on that, but not thinking about all of the medical advances that have occurred since his father was 79. And now moving forward, for everybody we're talking to, that conversation has been many years ago now. And so think about the medical opportunities that will allow you to potentially outlive what your parents did. I would say, Scott, if I'm going to err on planning, I would rather assume that somebody's going to be here longer and be wrong than assume that they're going to be here a shorter period of time. So what are we looking at in probabilities if somebody makes it to age 62?
Yeah, so if you're a man and you're 62 today, there's a 91% chance you're going to reach age 67, according to the data. Still an 85% chance of reaching age 70. And as you get to down the line there, obviously the numbers go down, but age 77, there's a 67% likelihood and a 53% chance that you reach age 81. Numbers go down considerably as you get out to age 90. It's only about an 18% chance. Women live longer typically, so there's a 29% chance that a woman would reach age 90 if they're 62 today, a 77% chance that they reach age 77, and a 66% chance that they reach age 81.
I do think it's interesting what happens when you look, instead of at a single male or a single female, what happens when you look at a couple. If you are part of a couple at age 62, then your probability of reaching age 77 is 92%. Compared to 67 and 77 on the individual male and female, respectively, and an 84% probability of reaching age 81, and then even 42% was pretty high for age 90. So the point is, you may very well be here longer than what you currently think, and we just need to plan that you still have the amount of income that you need to have in retirement.
Yeah, and ultimately, to wrap up this question, the decision rests on, do you have the assets to bridge the gap? Because when we're talking about deciding whether to take it early or whether to take it late, when we build a retirement income plan, there's going to be a definitive monthly income, an overall number that we're trying to achieve, and we're going to grow that number over time on an annual basis. So if you think about, let's just throw some numbers out there, $5,000 a month in income, that's your plan for retirement, and you don't claim Social Security when you immediately retire, then you're obviously going to have to get most of, if not all of, that $5,000 from your investments. So it might make sense if you are retired to go ahead and take the Social Security benefit to take some of the pressure off of the investments. Obviously, later in the game, the check is bigger and you can take pressure off on the back end. But I think it makes sense. A lot of people will say this too. Well, I want to take my check when I can get it because I don't believe Social Security is going to be around. We should probably address that as well.
Yeah, the viability on Social Security is a little bit better than what it has been in the past. They've just updated that recently. But here's what we have been saying for years and what we will continue to say, and that is that Washington, given every opportunity, they will delay and delay and delay the decision. But ultimately, at the end of the day, they want to be reelected more than anything else. And so they will, before Social Security gets to the point that the check amounts would decrease, they will wind up doing some alterations to the program to allow it to have it to just continue. And one of the things that people don't think about is Social Security going quote unquote bankrupt does not mean that it's out of money. What continues to happen is while Scott and I are continuing to work and some of our clients are retired, we're paying into the system while they are collecting. So there's not, even if they don't make any changes, there's not going to be a time when there's no check at all. And we do believe that they will alter the program to allow them to not have to step backwards on the checks, but they're going to wait till the last minute to do it. But you also have to keep in mind, just think through the impact that this has on society. You know, that we know people are going to vote, people are going to make their voices known, so they will make a change, and they've done it in the past. We've seen the full retirement age used to be 65, now that's gone to 67, and there wasn't we didn't have riots in the streets or anything like that. They just changed it and we moved on. They will do something along those lines again in the future.
Well, you think about bringing it back to life expectancy. It makes sense to raise that retirement age occasionally as we live longer. As recently as 1950, the life expectancy in this country was 68.
Yeah.
So you didn't live much past your Social Security benefit. So we do know Social Security is going to be there. It just is a matter of what will it look like. The last projections, which I say last projections, they were released last week. The new Social Security Trust Fund report is that it would begin to go insolvent in 2035, which is a year later than the previous year's report, and only 80% of benefits would be payable if Congress does nothing. But Social Security has to exist by law unless they change the law, and then we don't certainly think that's going to happen either. So you have to count on Social Security. If you want to be super conservative, super worst case scenario, you could plan with 80% of your benefit. That is our question of the week. I'm sure that you could figure that out as much time as we spend on it. We like talking about Social Security. Very important. Get the questions to us, whatever your question is. Congratulations to Jerry for reaching out with that question of the week. And we would like you to claim your free Get Ready for the Future Show tumbler. All you have to do is send us an email, show@getreadyforthefuture.com. I said Jerry. It was actually Nick. Sorry about that, Nick. Just send that email in and claim your free tumbler. And we would certainly encourage everyone listening and watching to send in their question as well. Maybe we'll name yours as the question of the week. You can send a voicemail or send a text to 501-381-5228 or send an email to show@getreadyforthefuture.com and ask your question. That's what Adam from Jonesboro did. Here's his question. Does it hinder me in any way to invest in target date funds in both my 401k and Roth IRA instead of using different ETFs or mutual funds? It might, Adam. It might hinder you. Do you know what you're investing in with those target date funds? And that's probably a good definition time.
Yeah, so target date funds, you'll see them in 5-year increments. So you might have a target date fund of 2030, 2035, 2040, etc. And the sooner that year happens, the more conservatively those assets are going to be invested. So most target date funds are heavily loaded in bonds relative to the age of the investor, and they're automatically becoming more and more conservative as time progresses. So if it's a 2035 target date fund, the closer we get to 2035, the more conservative those allocations are going to become. And conservative is really a very relative term. That's what's so important to understand about these target date funds. if you have, and I realize where we are as I'm saying this, but think about 2035 is only 11 years out, but a lot can change in the interest rate environment in an 11-year time period. So this is why this matters in spite of where we are right now. As interest rates, and if you think about the relationship between interest rates and bond prices, and go back to the elementary school playground, seesaw or teeter-totter, whatever you called it, so they sit on opposite ends of the seesaw. You have bond prices on one side and interest rates on the other. As interest rates go down, bond prices go up. As interest rates go up, bond prices go down. It's a scientific relationship. You cannot change that. And so if we get into a rising interest rate environment when you're in one of these funds that is heavily allocated in the bond sector, then it doesn't matter that the market, quote unquote, the market is doing well or whatever. If interest rates are rising, the value of those bonds is going to decrease, period.
Yeah, I think for me, the target date funds, and when I think about that, I think about the 401k statements that I've seen recently. That's about all that's left in there. They're in many 401k plans, they're not even offering any individual mutual funds or certainly ETFs. So I understand, Adam, in your 401k, you may not have a lot of choice, but I also think about if you're not working with a financial advisor for your long-term financial goals, this becomes an easy button. And the easy button is not always the best choice for you. So I would encourage you to work with a financial advisor, determine if that target date fund is going to give you the growth you need. But for the reasons that Janet just mentioned, you may not get the growth you need. And I would even say this, you're also, with your new contributions, potentially not going to be able to take advantage of dollar cost averaging because the volatility, if there isn't an interest rate rise and you have a heavy allocation to fixed income that is a little softer in the volatility realm, you're not going to be able to catch those investments on sale, so to speak, because the volatility in the market, in the stock market, is your friend when you are buying on a consistent basis over a long period of time. And it can be, it's not guaranteed to be, but it can be additive to your overall rate of return. So we oftentimes talk about in a 401k with our even near-term retirement clients about having your old money and your new money. The old money is what you've accumulated over a long period of time. You may want to take some risk off of that as you get closer to retirement if the money has to stay in the 401k. But with the new money, Janet, sometimes if you do have to do a target date fund and you may be retiring next week, it might actually be beneficial to be in a 2045 or 2050 target date fund.
Absolutely. It kind of lets you do buckets within the 401k to the extent that you can. But, Scott, you mentioned how restrictive the choices have become inside 401ks. So another thing, Adam, that you might consider, and we don't know what your age is and your proximity to retirement, but many 401ks have for decades allowed what we call a 59.5 in-service distribution option. And what that allows you to do, and I'm not saying that this is the right move for you, but it's important really for anybody to understand what their choices are. So you need to understand if your plan allows for you to do a 59.5 rollover, and then the choice that you have, if you're still working there, you can leave the assets in the 401k and invest in the choices that they have, but you also have the option to roll the current balance out and move it into a traditional and or a Roth IRA, depending on the tax treatment of the dollars that you have, and that opens up the entire world of investment choices to you. So it's just important to understand what those choices are. Obviously, if you've had a job change, then you've got a couple of other choices as well, because you could leave it there, you could move it into the new plan. You do have the option of cashing it out, not the wisest thing, because then you're going to lose those benefits of tax deferral and all of that. But in this time of 59.5 leading up to the time that you're actually going to take retirement income, it really does give you an opportunity to diversify a little bit more than what you might be able to do inside of the 401k.
Let me piggyback off of that and just say, if you're listening or watching today and you recently turned 59.5, or you recently left your employer for a new job and you'd like to know more about your options, hear those options over again and talk through with a financial advisor what might be best for you, you can reach out to us and call toll-free 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526, and a Gen Wealth financial advisor would be glad to talk to you. We are going to have to squeeze quickly.
We can do it.
This final
Let's
question.
roll.
Abigail from Little Rock writes, I make about $20,000 a year from my side gig. I want to add a few more side gigs to my rotation so I can learn some new skills and make some extra income. What's the best way to keep track of all this financially? And do I need to start a business to house it all under? Well, way to hustle, Abigail, and hope you're saving some of that money that you're pulling in from that side hustle. That's a whole other topic. You didn't ask that question, but the first thing I would say right off the bat, we're not CPAs, so we're not going to deliver tax advice here. But I do think a CPA, even outside the realm of tax advice, can help you work through and even help you create a business entity if you need to. But I do think that is really the lead here when we begin answering this question is you don't want to get in trouble with the IRS when you work through all these choices.
And frankly, it's very easy to do. I'll be very transparent that even when John and I started Gen Wealth, and we are financial advisors, we have all the registrations to be able to do the job that we do as advisors, and there were still things that we did not know from a business owner and tax perspective, just because that is a separate area completely. Now we know them just because, we got the black and blue bruises to prove it along the way and learn a few things. But I will tell you, it is important to make your CPA your very best friend. You need to be on a first name basis with your CPA and understand, be sure, here's a key with your CPA, be sure that they are proactive and not just reactive, and those are few and far between, but it is a game changer in the relationship. I know it definitely was for us. So be sure that you have a good relationship there. Not everybody does this, but you asked, if there's a best way to keep track of all of this, and do you need to start a business to house it all under? I am personally a fan of going through the Secretary of State and establishing an official entity to handle things like this. Our family has another business in addition to Gen Wealth that my extended family is involved in, and we set up an LLC. I'm not saying that an LLC is the answer for you, but to spend some time with your CPA and or an attorney and get to the right answer for you on that is absolutely very important. And I have, for the other business, I have a bookkeeper who handles all of those details, because that's not how I want to spend my time, nor is it my area of expertise.
Yeah, I would say I've also been through that process of creating an LLC, and there are multiple different kinds of business entities. The LLC is very easy to do through the Secretary of State's office. I think the most difficult part of that for me was coming up with the name because A, you have to come up with a name, and B, it has to be one that hasn't been used. So you have to work through that. But I think there are some benefits. There are then expenses of that business entity that could potentially help you on taxes. And if there's a loss, that helps to go through the business to create that, or to show that rather on your tax return. I think those are some great options. Again, you need to talk to a CPA to make sure it's right for you. But it also, the question Abigail has here is keep track of all of it. I think that's a great way to do that, is because it's all housed under one roof instead of scattered through a bunch of different places. And if it is even generating anything above $600, it's important to note that is considered taxable income. It
is, and the advantage also, if you have a downturn, you get to take the tax advantages on the loss through the business.
Yeah, so some things to consider there for Abigail, and we didn't probably get through all the things we could talk about there, but you're to be congratulated for sure on the side hustles that you're doing, and I can't stress enough to make sure that you have some of that put away. Create a plan for your retirement, because you can't hustle forever. And certainly we would want you to reach financial independence at some place in the future. You heard the bell there a few seconds ago. Time for our final thoughts. Janet, we'll start with you.
Scott, I feel like we today ran a marathon at a sprinter's pace. We covered so much ground. But, to all of our listeners, it doesn't matter how much we covered. It matters what's important to you. What is your stage, and what are the questions that you have on your mind? At Gen Wealth, we are education-driven, strategy-based, and team-delivered. So regardless of your questions and your stage of life, we have answers for you and how you need to move forward. So whether you're at a point where you just like to send us in a question to get it on the show and help you move forward a little bit, or you're at a point where you need a detailed plan on paper, on purpose, that's why we're here.
Yeah, and back to our topic at the beginning of the show, whether it's a $250,000 lump sum or a $20,000 a year side hustle that you need to figure out how to allocate those dollars, that will be the best for you to reach financial independence. We would encourage you to download a free brochure that we have. We believe there are 7 steps for everybody to consider to financial independence. You can download that by visiting our website. Go to getreadyforthefuture.com/steps, or you can text the word STEPS to the number we always use, 501-381-5228. Again, it's 501-381-5228. Download those 7 steps to financial independence today and get started on your path to discover true financial independence. That is all the time we have for this week's Get Ready for the Future show. As always, again, if you have a question, get them into us. Call, leave a voicemail, text them to 501-381-5228.
The GenWealth Financial Team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or call our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Securities offered through LPL Financial. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Independent Advisor Alliance. Independent Advisor Alliance and GenWealth Financial Advisors are separate entities from LPL Financial.